working for you. A weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Roy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for you is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for you.
Good afternoon, and I welcome you to another Working for You program. Today is the 22nd day of February. The Government of National Unity has just had a very successful week, 2 years in office. And today, we're going to continue by speaking about one of those activities that took place during the week of activities, and that is with respect to housing. I am your host, Roy Williams. I welcome you to this program, all of you here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and those of you who are listening abroad. You are very, very welcome to this program. I have with me today the Honorable Eugene Hamilton, who holds many portfolios. He has many hats. He is the Minister of Human Settlement with responsibility for housing, lands and cooperatives, and community development et al. Welcome to this program, Minister Hamilton.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Thank you to your listening audience and also to your viewing audience for participating in this program. I thank you for the welcome that you gave to me. And I look forward to sharing with you what's happening from the ministry's point of view. And trust that I will get an interaction from those of you who are listening, call in, ask any questions, and see how I can respond to them.
Now, shelter is one of our basic needs. It is a place that can protect us from the elements, keep us warm and safe, and give us the encouragement to satisfy our other needs. According to Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, shelter is one of the requirements for addressing our physiological needs, of course, along with the need for food, for water, for air, for sleep, and sex, etc. Maslow represented the human's physiological needs as the base of a triangle to show that meeting these needs are the most important in our lives. If these needs are not met, the individual may only be able to focus on meeting their physiological needs and not feel motivated to move towards self-actualization. We often change the shelter in which we live. We leave home once we are of age and set up our own space. We marry and have children, thus requiring a larger space for the added members of our family. There comes a time in our lives when we downsize and no longer need so many rooms and spaces in which to live. But no matter what time in our lives we are, we all search for a shelter to call our own. And so today, Minister, you are the Minister responsible for housing. And the government launched its Unity Housing Solutions program on February 17th. Housing is always one of the major public policy when it comes to any government. What is the philosophy and policy of the government of the day with respect to housing?
Thank you again, Roy. First of all, before I go to that philosophy, I'll capture in very simple words. Let me also congratulate those who celebrated with us our second anniversary. It was indeed a fulfilling week, and it has gone beyond the week indeed, and it will culminate in a lecture on the 9th of March as well. I think the person for the lecture is the
Justice Saunders.
Right, so please, if you have not heard about it before, I hope that you will attend that lecture when Justice Saunders is here. It is on good governance. It's an important lecture. The week has been one that has been packed with significant deliverables that the government has pledged to deliver, and I focused on Friday on the housing program that would be administered by the National Housing Corporation. The National Housing Corporation was established by an act in 1996, and in that act, fundamentally it proposes to provide shelter, homes to the poor and indigent. While it is true that the act provides for other programs to be administered, the focus of it was to ensure that poor people and of course indigent people are not left without shelter. As you rightly said in your opening remarks, the basic needs, the hierarchy of needs begins with those three important social needs: food, clothing, and shelter. And if an individual is to enjoy any other further needs or to aspire to any further needs, those basic needs of food, clothing, and shelter become important. While I, as with another cap on my head in health, think that health is an important must for individuals, I must also add that so too is food, clothing, and shelter. Now, in terms of our housing program, we come under what we call the Human Settlement Ministry. I believe it is probably the first time that it has been described that way, as a ministry, human settlement. You know, you would have heard before about housing, Ministry of Housing. But human settlement, of course, involves much more than housing. We have to look at certain habitat, development of certain habitats. It will involve the sporting, the recreation, the shopping, and so on. But for now, today, we focus on the housing aspect of it, especially the housing aspect as related to National Housing Corporation, because that is imminent, and we want people to understand what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, who will benefit from it, and how to go about making applications and becoming eligible for any of the programs that we're going to do. This journey began, as you know, way back in our manifesto, when we promised to do a number of housing solutions for the Federation once we were elected. And we have been, for the last 2 years, working through and leafing through a number of proposals. Some of them foreign entities interested in building in St. Kitts, but looking for government guarantees, some of them huge sums, of course. But as you know, we came from the debt position we were in. We could not be embarking on government guarantees that will put our debt position in jeopardy, at least on a collision course with that of the IMF. And so we waited, we paced ourselves. We at NHC completed some housing there that were not completed without the funding. We had to then await the support of the Ministry of Finance. We got through that era, and we at NHC embarked on a program to reduce the level of delinquency from 35%, where we met it, to reduce that. And over the 2-year period, we have reached a point where, at least in our banks where no money was, we can claim to have a couple billions of dollars to be able to do some housing programs even beyond this program that we are going to be embarking upon. Now, this program is funded primarily by the Social Security. Let me put it differently. We procured a loan from the Social Security of $50 million. And it is that which is going to be managed, implemented the program by NHC so that we can deliver a minimum of 300 houses.
Okay. Now, the housing policy of the government is enshrined in the National Housing Corporation Act,
Yes.
or the NHC Act.
Right.
What does the Act state with respect to housing, and what is the function of the National Housing Corporation?
Well, the National Housing Corporation is charged with the responsibility to develop the housing stock in the state of St. Kitts. Well, more so in St. Kitts than in Nevis, though it is a national act. Because on Nevis there's a separate regime that works towards that development. That responsibility falls to the National Housing Corporation, and primarily because there'll be those persons in the state who will not be able to build for themselves. But involved in all of that is an overall policy that government must encourage the development of housing. And that is why, in the broader context of the Human Settlement and the Ministry of Human Settlement, we have considered the implementation of housing, especially at the middle to upper income levels, through different development programs that will involve the private sector. But when it comes to the National Housing Corporation, we focus on just the indigent and the poor. You may find that because of our ability to do so, we may very well move the needle a bit on what we call poor. We believe, however, that we can provide services up to persons, I should say to families, where the household income is not more than $5,000 a month. Traditionally, and in fact primarily, we'll be looking to the household incomes of $3,000 or less. I said household income, where two hands come together and clap. But that's the primary focus, where you have a household income not exceeding $3,000. But you will find, and I don't know if any of us know the exact numbers, but you will find that there will be opportunities for persons who are beyond $3,000 income, and persons or families, and we will certainly be reaching out to those persons as well.
Sure. Now, you speak about the poor and the indigent.
Yes.
And I suppose we can have a debate on who is the poor.
Who is poor and who is indigent.
And who is indigent, because sometimes, different categories of poor.
Yes.
There are people who are in abject poverty.
Right.
I don't know, that is very few and far between here in St. Kitts. But of course, there's the working poor.
Yes.
There are people who are working,
exactly.
but
and it doesn't matter what salary it is, you can be well salaried and still be poor.
That is correct. So, and I have also heard the accusation that the government is distributing houses, in the past,
Yes.
to people who cannot afford to pay for them. And people who can afford, they're not getting a house. So, and what about middle income applicants?
That is really you made a point just now, which I think I ought to say a few things about. The point about distributing houses to persons who cannot afford to pay for them. Really and truly, that is one of the key functions of the National Housing Corporation, to provide for those who may not be able to pay for it. In other words, people must not be left sleeping on the lawns outside.
Right.
We in this federation have persons today who are still sleeping on the galvanized. I know of 2 persons right now, and I am determined that before anyone moves into those houses which are building, those indigent persons will be housed. And that is really the import of the particular act called the National Housing Act. No one should be sleeping outdoors. No one should be, overall policy in the government, people should not be living in a home where there is no water and no bathroom, no toilet facilities. That we believe that you have to give people a hand up, take them out of that abject poverty. It is inhumane for us to continue.
No, it really sounds like the Jesus policy to me.
You're right. You're right about that.
You shelter the homeless.
You're right about that. That is what it is.
You clothe the naked.
Right. That's what.
And you give food to the hungry. Now, we mentioned about those basic needs.
Yes. If you
earlier.
If you go back to the act, you would realize that if the act had been implemented in its fullness, we would have had an act that would demand a contribution, let me put it, a deduction from your wages of X%, I think it was 5, matched by your employer, similar to Social Security, that goes into a fund. And it was really it was a sort of redistributive mechanism,
Sure.
where the people who have can provide opportunity that those who really don't have can have. The fullness of the act was never enacted because that deduction program
Sure.
that never came into being, and so the act itself provides for the housing to be provided, and we as a result are positioned these days to find resources, whether through loan funds or what have you, or grant funds, to provide those facilities. What has happened over time, however, is that the distribution of houses have encouraged persons to think that NHC should be building a house for everyone. That is furthest from the truth. The truth is, NHC should be limited in its conduct of building houses, and the private sector, the individuals, the market mechanism should work to ensure that persons provide for themselves their shelter, their food, and their clothing.
Okay, so that, you mentioned about the private sector. I suppose that is where the middle income applicants
Right.
would really come in. And I know that there was some talk about public-private partnerships
Yes.
with respect to providing housing solutions for some. What is this partnership really about?
Well, we are prepared to provide partnership with persons and or corporations to provide housing. While we do not specifically indicate to them that, look, you cannot be in the low-income market, that's possible. We like to encourage them to think of the middle to upper income. Middle income because there are a lot of persons in the country. St. Kitts and Nevis had become, between the 1980s to, say, the turn of the century, a more middle income
Country.
The public servant, the policemen, the teachers, the what have you. Their incomes, you cannot on the face of it. If you look at the incomes, the aggregate of the incomes per year, it will not fall in what you call the poor category. Categorize poor based on the assessment done in 2007-2008. The poverty assessment, they will not fall in what you call the category of the poor. Yet there are those persons who may not be in a position to move the financial institutions to get a loan, to build a property of their own. And so you can't, in the classical way, say they are poor. And would not, if we were to apply strictly as the act says, will not qualify at all
As poor.
as being poor, or any housing solutions by NHC at all. And while some of them will qualify, because we do categorize them as needing, because they cannot move the financial institutions, the banks, we also want to encourage individuals, corporations, to find an opportunity to grow the natural market for the construction of houses without the dependence on government where you can, or with quasi-dependence, if you will, on government. Now, TDC is one of those organizations that has done that in the past.
Sure.
If you go down to Connery, you will see a housing development down at Connery that is really the genius of TDC, and really is an upscale, a middle-income upscale market. Housing area, which is, you go there, you feel really safe and comfortable and in good surroundings. The habitat is really, really very, attractive. And I have been encouraging individual organizations. I know that right now we are considering, for example, in fact, I have encouraged persons to the point where I know that applications have gone to the Ministry of Sustainable Development to acquire land for the purpose of building houses for middle-income persons. And there are some areas in St. Kitts that are ripe for that. For example, if you go towards Challengers, above John Gums going up that hill, that area is ripe for middle-income to upper-income development. I've been up there.
And
it's an amazing view. It's an amazing view. You may have infrastructure in some of the areas, if not all.
Sure.
Right? But there's an opportunity. Right now, as I say, I'm encouraging a team of persons who came to me from St. Kitts to get the support of the Ministry of Sustainable Development for land so that they can do the construction of housing. And I'm encouraging them into the middle income market. And by middle income market, I mean they will go to the professionals, the teachers, the doctors, those persons who, for one reason or the other, may not necessarily be in a position to move the banks, whether it is because of the age or because of their disposable income after what.
Yes.
Let's face it. Most young people who pursue tertiary education, who do not maybe get a full scholarship, end up with a mortgage, a loan to repay when they return.
Sometimes it's like an albatross.
It is like
around their neck.
And our government has promised to look at that. And before this, we will be looking closely at how we assist those persons with those mortgages. Because you have $150,000, say, which is around your neck for 10 years.
Yes.
So for practically 10 years, you may not be able to do anything to raise any finance at the bank to do any mortgages of your own. But you're a young person, maybe 29, 30.
That's right.
You may even be married,
That's
ready
correct.
to start your family. How do you start your family when maybe your wife and yourself, both of you, are both mortgaged for student loans and in no position to raise that credit with the bank, And there is where I'm encouraging private sector to come in and say, listen, we can move the capital, we can build, and we can maybe even help you to consolidate so that you can eventually be in a home, you, your wife. You
Yes.
can then have your house, your home, you have your transportation, you have all of the amenities, and you can raise your family. Direct your attention to raising the family, which is an important ingredient and element in nation building, raising that family. Because too many of our people don't take raising a family as as an important mission in our life. We get our
Yes.
children, but raising the family is a very important.
That is correct.
And
It is called socialization.
and it cannot, and usually you fail in doing so when your finances, when you're sick, when you're not in order, when you're struggling from one place, maybe the house you live in, somebody is chasing you out of it. There are all kinds of things that can turn your head and make you lose sight of that important role in your life. That is what we hope, that the middle income, that the business people, the persons who can raise the capital, can assist in helping to build that family and help us reduce the level of deviant and criminal criminal behavior in the country because of the family togetherness.
But you know something though, Minister Hamilton, the
Yeah.
Prime Minister said something very, very interesting, and I listened to him
Yeah.
while he was speaking and looked deeper into what he was saying,
Yeah.
basically from a psychological, a philosophical perspective. He said, we give you a house, but you must make it
Your
a
home.
home.
I
And
remember the comment.
he did make that comment. And
Right.
for those who were listening, basically to what he was saying and what is behind what he was saying, not because you have a house, it means it's a home. And it brings back to you what you were saying about the raising of the family
Yes.
and all that sort of thing, and how it is important. Yes, you have
Yes.
shelter and
It's
so
a
on.
house.
But
But home's supposed to be safe.
he spoke
And have
about
to-
the beautification of it.
It must be better than the way you get it. You must create the atmosphere around it that makes it home.
And that brings a
You know what
whole
home-
nother dimension.
Yes.
It is not just something that is material,
Right.
but yet within it, you must have that mix of the emotional
Yeah.
and the psychological and all those other things that go into really making for what is life.
That's right. That's right.
You know?
And I think if we can reach that level, that point, quite frankly, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, the level of deviant and criminal conduct will be reduced, because there's more of because the home is supposed to be that loving place, and once you teach love to a family, teach love to a people, once they're loving inside the family, the love will spread to the neighbors, and the neighbors to the villages and to the country.
Yes.
And once there's more love across the board, there's less opportunity
We have a better
for
society.
conflict. And
The other aspect is that of rent.
yes,
Sometimes the rent is very high, and sometimes it's better to have your own place than to be paying rent.
yeah,
Sometimes we have to
You
pay
know,
rent, but
yes.